Okay. Hi. So what we just watched, I was going to explain it, but they actually came up and started talking. And so, yeah, this was an open air worship in Amsterdam's red light district. This group kind of goes around Europe and does these open air things. They've been in Antwerp, which is in Belgium. I say, I guess Belgium and the Netherlands pretty much is where they're at. So it's really cool. They do these like 2 hour long open air worships and stuff. And as they're doing this, you can actually, this is like 2 hours, more and more people start coming up and stuff. And you can actually see in the background, there's some, sex shops and brothels and stuff like that. The cafe, those of you who have been to Amsterdam know this, but a cafe in Amsterdam does not serve food. A cafe in Amsterdam serves weed. So anyway, so that's what that is about. It's just an amazing ministry. I've started following this group. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and watch like a 2 hour long worship at home, but I don't know. I mean, I really like it. So I am William Henley. I am the executive associate pastor here. He likes my lower third. And the name of my message today is A Tale of Two Kings. It's roughly based on the book A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. And I honestly didn't like the name of that because really I don't consider the third king they talk about to really be a king. So this is part of the Identity Thief series. Today, we're going to be hitting a lot more scripture. I do not have really notes. I do have points and stuff in here, but it's not scripted out like it was last week. I do have an opening story, and so as part of the Identity Thief, there's a couple of ways I could tell this. I remember growing up, we would go to like youth camp or on a mission trip or something, and the youth would just come back on fire. They were ready to just do all of these ministries and go out and evangelize. And then the church would be like, calm down, we're not ready for that. And this seems to be kind of like a recurring theme. Tristan was called into a ministry, but the church he was at before he became saved. He kind of started there. And Tristan's mentioned this in his story, so it's not going to, I'm not doing anything saying this, but revealing anything I shouldn't, but Tristan was not a good kid. And the problem is there was people in that church who, after Tristan got saved and got the call to ministry, they didn't see the change in his life and basically didn't want him preaching and stuff. I was at a mega church when I got the call in. Well, actually, I was 17 when I got the call into ministry. I guess when I say I got the call to preach, I was at a mega church. And the problem is, and it's something the church knows about, and they don't know how to handle it. But they've gotten so used to bringing in these like big names and stuff like that. It's like, well, and there's an expectation of what's going to come from the pulpit. It's like, well, what about someone in the church who gets the call? How do we equip them? So that's kind of why Tristan and I kind of started this church, because, here it was our God-given identity. But, there's things in the way that prevented us from living out what God was calling us to be. So that's kind of what today's message is going to be on, is people can steal your identity. Huh? Steal. I wrote this at 7 o'clock this morning. Yeah, people can, yeah, sorry, Christy. It's Steal, steal. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is hitting heavily on 1st and 2nd Samuel. And I told Tristan this, I don't know why it's called 1st and 2nd Samuel. 1st Samuel starts off talking about Samuel, but Samuel dies halfway through 1st Samuel. And then we still have 2nd Samuel. So, we're going to start off here with God gives Israel a king. As Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel. Look at this, 1 Samuel 8, as Samuel grew old. He appointed his sons to be judges over Israel. Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons, held court in Beersheba. Let's see. But they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. What is going on? Oh, okay, I see what's going on. Okay. It's actually doing what it should be doing. It's actually keeping it by paragraphs. Finally, all the elders of Israel met at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. Look, they told him, you are old now, and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations have. Samuel was displeased with their request and went to the Lord for guidance. Do everything they say to you, the Lord replied, for they are rejecting me, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, they have continually abandoned me and followed other gods. And now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but solemnly warn them about the way a king will reign over them. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers, making them run before the chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army. Some will be forced to plow in his fields and harvest his crops. And some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes from him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his use. He will demand 1/10 of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from this king you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into battle. So Samuel repeated to the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord replied, do as they say and give them a king. Then Samuel agreed and sent the people home. There was a wealthy, influential man named Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abiel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Aphiah of the tribe of Benjamin. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. By the way, if you can't pronounce the Hebrew names, just pretend that you know what you're doing anyway. Okay, so his son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. So they entered the town, and as they passed through the gates, Samuel was coming out toward them to go up to the place of worship. Now the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, about this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him to be the leader of my people, Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on my people in mercy and have heard their cry. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said, that's the man I told you about. He will rule my people. Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, "Can you please tell me where the seer's house is?" So Samuel was the first prophet of Israel. So they actually, well, I guess Moses, but he was really the first. Well, I guess Eli really never heard the voice of God, though. He was called a seer rather than a prophet at the time. Okay. "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up to the place of worship ahead of me. We will eat there together, and in the morning I'll tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, for they have been found. And I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of all of Israel's hopes." Saul replied, "But I'm only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking to me like this?" Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them above the 30 special guests. Samuel then instructed the cook to bring Saul the finest cut of meat, the piece that had been set aside for the guest of honor. So the cook brought in the meat and placed it before Saul. "Go ahead and eat it," Samuel said. "I was saving it for you even before I invited these others." So Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the palace of worship and returned to town, Samuel took Saul up to the roof of the house and prepared a bed for him there. At daybreak the next morning, Samuel called to Saul, "Get up, it is time you were on your way." So Saul got up and got ready, and he and Samuel left the house together. When they reached the edge of the town, Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, "Stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God." Then Samuel took a flask of oil. The oil. No, there it is. He took some oil and he poured it over Saul's head. You know what? I'll just do that. And he kissed Saul and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be the ruler over Israel, his special position." I actually got oil on my fingers. I am anointed. Which means I am a Messiah, because that's what Messiah means, is to be anointed. It's not the same thing as David was a Messiah, Saul was a Messiah. They were anointed. The Messiah. Yeah, no, there is the difference between a Messiah and the Messiah. The Messiah is Jesus. Yeah, but Messiah means anointed. So, yeah. So it's definitely the difference between Mashiach and HaMashiach in Hebrew. Okay. I'm sorry, I got off track. This is what happens when I don't have a script. I'm doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be ruler over Israel, his special possession. When you leave me today, you will see 2 men beside Rachel's tomb at Zilzah on the border of Benjamin. They will tell you that the donkeys have been found and that your father has stopped worrying about them and is now worrying about you. He is asking, "Have you seen my son?" When you get to the Oak of Tabor, you will see 3 men coming toward you who are on their way to worship God at Bethel. One will be bringing 3 young goats. Whatever. Let's skip that. Okay. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves, of which you will accept. Okay, when you arrive, let's scamp. At that time, the Spirit of God will... Okay, at that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. So, I should have made a note here, but the Lord gave Saul a new identity. He was from the smallest tribe of Israel, from the least significant family, and now God has made him king over Israel. So, after these signs will take place, do what must be done, for God is with you. We're going to come back to this, for God is with you. We'll be coming back to this later. Let's see. Okay, later Samuel called the people of Israel to meet before the Lord at Mizpah. And he said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, has declared. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all the nations that were opposing you. But though I have rescued you from your misery and distress, you have rejected your God today and have said, 'No, we want a king instead.' Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by tribes and clans." So Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Benjamin was chosen by lot. Then he brought each family of the tribe of Benjamin before the Lord, and the family of the Matriites was chosen. And finally Saul, son of Kish, was chosen from among them. But when they looked for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, "Where is he?" And the Lord replied, "He is hiding among the baggage." So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. Then Samuel said to all the people, "This is the man the Lord has chosen for you as king. No one in Israel is like him." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king." I think I am... Okay, then Samuel told the people what the rights and the duties of a king were. He wrote them down on a scroll and placed them before the Lord. Then Samuel sent the people home again. Okay, sometimes God gives us what we ask for, even if he knows it's bad for us. Be careful what you ask for. Some of them crossed the Jordan River and escaped. Okay, so this is a battle. Okay, so Saul stayed at Gilgal, and his men were trembling with fear. Okay, Saul waited there 7 days for Samuel. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so Samuel was supposed to be coming, and Samuel had instructed him, "Do not go into battle until I arrive." Well, Saul waited there for 7 days for Samuel, and Samuel had instructed him earlier, but Samuel still didn't come. Saul realized that his troops were rapidly slipping away. So he demanded, "Bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings." And Saul sacrificed the burnt offerings himself. He was not a Levite, and he was not a Nazirite. He was not ordained to perform the sacrifices. Just as Saul was finishing with the burnt offering, Samuel arrived. Saul went out to meet him and welcome him. But Samuel said, "What is it that you have done? I saw my men scattering from me, and you didn't arrive when you said you would, and the Philistines are at Michmash ready for battle." So I said, "The Philistines are ready to march against us at Gilgal, and I haven't even asked for the Lord's help. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering myself before you came." "How foolish!" Samuel exclaimed. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Had you kept it, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom must end, for the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. The Lord has already appointed him to be the leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." The Lord can take away his blessing if you disobey him. So let's continue. Okay, so now, we're up in 1 Samuel 14. Now, when Saul had secured his grasp on Israel's throne, he fought against his enemies in every direction, against Moab, Ammon, Edom, the kings of Jobah, and the Philistines. And whenever he turned, he was victorious. He performed great deeds and conquered the Amalekites, saving Israel from all those who had plundered them. Look at this. God still delivered Israel from their enemies, even though their king had disobeyed God. One day Samuel said to Saul, "It was the Lord who told me to anoint you as king of his people Israel. Now listen to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I have decided to settle accounts with the nations of Amalekite for opposing Israel when they came from Egypt." Okay, so this is important. I have 29 verses here. This is a long set of scripture, but this is important. This is very, very important to the story. "Now go and completely destroy the entire Amalekite nation, men, women, children, babies, cattle, sheep, goats, camels, and donkey. Destroy everything." So Saul mobilized his army at Telaim. There were 200,000 soldiers from Israel, and 100,000 men from Judah. Good grief. That's right now, that's more than is in the Ukrainian army. Wow. Then Saul and his army went to the town of the Amalekites and laid wait in the valley. Saul sent this warning to the Canaanites: move away from where the Amalekites live, or you will die with them. For you showed kindness to all the people of Israel when they came to Egypt. So the Canaanites packed up and left. Then Saul slaughtered the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Shur, east of Egypt. Now look at this. He captured Agag, the Amalekite king, but completely destroyed everything else. Saul and his men spared Agag's life and kept the best of the sheep and goats, the cattle, the fat calves, and the lambs, everything, in fact, that appealed to them. They destroyed only what was worthless or of poor quality. Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am sorry that I ever made Saul king, for he has not been loyal to me and has refused to obey my command. Samuel was so deeply moved when he heard this that he cried out to the Lord all night. Early the next morning, Samuel went to find Saul. Someone told him Saul went to the town of Carmel to set up a monument to himself. Then he went on to Gilgal. Saul set up a monument to himself. When Samuel finally found him, Saul greeted him cheerfully. May the Lord bless you, he said. I have carried out the Lord's command. Then what is all the bleating of sheep and goats and the lowing of cattle I hear? Samuel demanded. It is true that the army spared the best of the sheep, goats, and cattle, Saul admitted, but they are going to sacrifice them to the Lord your God. We have destroyed everything else. Then Samuel said to Saul, stop. Listen to what the Lord told me last night. What did he tell you? Saul asked. And Samuel told him, although you may think little of yourself, are you not the leader of the tribes of Israel? The Lord has anointed you king of Israel. And the Lord sent you on a mission and told you, go and completely destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, until they are all dead. Why haven't you obeyed the Lord? Why did you rush for the plunder and do what was evil in the Lord's sight? But I did obey the Lord, Saul insisted. I carried out the mission he gave me. I brought back King Agag, but I destroyed everyone else. He was told to destroy everyone and the livestock. Then my troops brought in the best of the sheep, goats, cattle, and plunder to sacrifice to the Lord your God. Oh, look at this. To sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal. Not my God, not our God, your God. So Saul does not see God as his God. But Samuel replied, what is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of the rams. Rebellion is as simple as witchcraft. Listen to this. Rebellion against God, willingly disobeying him, is as sinful as witchcraft. And stubbornness as bad as worshiping idols. So, because you have rejected the command of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Then Saul admitted to Samuel, yes, I have sinned. I have disobeyed your instructions and the Lord's command, for I was afraid of the people and did what they demanded. So now he's blaming someone else. But now please forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel replied, I will not go back with you. Since you have rejected the Lord's command, he has rejected you as king of Israel. As Samuel turned to go, Saul tried to hold him back and tore the hem of his robe. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to someone else, one who is better than you. And he who is the glory of Israel will not lie, nor will he change his mind, for he is not human that he should change his mind. Now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel, so fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king. But Samuel asked, how can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. Take a heifer with you, the Lord replied, and say that you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me. So Samuel did as the Lord instructed. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town came trembling to meet him. What's wrong? They asked. Do you come in peace? Yes, Samuel replied. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Purify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And Samuel performed the purification rite for Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice too. When they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Can you check OBS and make sure that the audio is still good? It should be because I downgraded OBS. Is the audio still good? Yep. Okay, great. Okay. I think the issues we were having last week was because I did an upgrade to our software and it broke a lot of stuff. So I had to downgrade. Okay. So the Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Remember that. Then Jesse told his sons Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, this is not the one the Lord has chosen. Next, Jesse summoned Shema, but Saul said, neither is this the one the Lord has chosen. In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel, but Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. Then Samuel asked, are these all the sons you have? Oh, there is still the youngest, Jesse replied, but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and goats. Send for him at once, Samuel said. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, this is the one, anoint him. So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought out and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. The next section that we're going to be talking about is God sends a spirit to torment Saul. This is actually something very interesting. Now the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a harmful spirit from the Lord tormented him. So God took his Holy Spirit away from Saul and actually sent another spirit there to torment him. And Saul's servants said to him, behold now, a harmful spirit from God is tormenting you. Let our Lord now command your servants who are before you to seek out a man who is skillful in playing the lyre. And when the harmful spirit from God is upon you, he will play it, and you will be well. So Saul said to his servants, provide for me a man who can play well and bring him to me. One of the young men answered, behold, I've seen a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite who is skillful in playing, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, and the Lord is with him. Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me David your son, who is with the sheep. And Jesse took a donkey laden with bread and a skin of wine and a young goat and sent them by David his son to Saul. And David came to see Saul and entered his service. And Saul loved him greatly, and he became his armor bearer. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, let David remain in my service, for he has found favor in my sight. Okay, before we go any further, we, believe it or not, this story is actually in order. David has been anointed king of Israel. And the Lord has ripped away his presence from Saul. But Saul is technically still king. So David enters Saul's service. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, let David remain in my service, for he has found favor in my sight. Now, I don't think at this time, I'm almost positive Saul did not know that David was the one anointed to be king after him. And whenever the harmful spirit from God was upon Saul, David took the lyre and played it with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well, and the harmful spirit would depart from him. As soon as he finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Okay, so this is Jonathan was one of the sons of Saul, and Jonathan and David became best friends. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Okay, I'm going to grab some water. Just a heads up, next week there won't be nearly as much scripture. Anyway, and Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, his armor bearer, and even his sword and his bow and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. As they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistines, the women came out of the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, and with musical instruments. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated, Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. They're already saying that David is better than Saul. And Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, they have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more can he have but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day forward. The next day, a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had his spear in his hand, and Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. And David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. Look at this, fearful awe. So, he had awe of David. He had fear of David. Hello, John Bevere. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. Then Saul said to David, here is my elder daughter Merab. I will give her to you for a wife. Only be valiant for me and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul thought, let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him. So basically, Saul's saying, you can have my daughter if you're faithful to me. Then he sends him to go out and fight their biggest enemy. And David said to Saul, who am I and who are my relatives, my father's clan in Israel, that I should be the son-in-law to the king. But at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel the Moabite for a wife. Now Saul's daughter Michal loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. Saul thought, let me give her to him, that she may be a snare for him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Therefore Saul said to David a second time, now you shall be my son-in-law. And Saul commanded his servants, speak to David in private and say, behold, the king has delight in you, and all his servants love you. Now then, become the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servant spoke these words. Let's see. Does it seem... Okay, I'm going to skip forward a bit, because it's getting long. Okay. Then Saul said, thus shall you say to David, the king desires no bride price except 100 foreskins of the Philistines, that he may be avenged of the king's enemies. Now Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. Before the time had expired, David arose and went, along with his men, and killed 200 Philistines. And David brought in 200 foreskins, which were given in forenumber to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him his daughter Michal for a wife. So, right now, because of this, David technically has a claim to the throne. David now technically has a claim to the throne, except that Saul had sons. I believe Jonathan was to be the next in line. But when Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him, Saul was even more afraid of David. So Saul was David's enemy continually. Okay, let's see. For the rest of Saul's life, he tries to kill David. This is pretty much the rest of 1 Samuel, is pretty much Saul trying to kill David. But David remained loyal to Saul throughout his entire life. Let's go forward. The next day, when the Philistines went out to strip the dead, they found the body of Saul and his 3 sons on Mount Gilboa. So Saul's sons are dead. David has married Saul's daughter. So they cut off Saul's head and stripped off his armor. Then they proclaimed the good news of Saul's death in their pagan temple to the people throughout the land of Philistia. They placed his army in the temple, and they fastened his body to the wall of the city of Bethshan. But when the people of Jabesh Gilead heard that the Philistines had done to Saul, and all their mighty warriors traveled through the night to Bethshan and took the bodies of Saul and his sons down from the wall, and they brought them to Jabesh, where they burned their bodies. In Jewish culture, you bury your dead. So first of all, they were dishonored twice. First of all, they were hung on the walls. Then they were burned. Then they took their bones and buried them beneath the tamask tree at Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. Now, I want you to look at David's response to Saul's death. I didn't realize the sermon was going to be this long. After the death of Saul, David returned from his victory over the Amalekites and spent 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day, a man arrived from Saul's army's camp. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show that he was in mourning. He fell to the ground before David in deep respect. "Where have you come from?" David asked. "I escaped from the Israelite camp," the man replied. "What happened?" David demanded. "Tell me how the battle went." The man replied, "Our entire army fled from the battle. Many of the men are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead." "How do you know Saul and Jonathan are dead?" David demanded of the young man. The man answered, I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the enemy chariot and charioteers closing in on him. When he turned and saw me, he cried out for me to come to him. How can I help? I asked him. He responded, Who are you? And he said, I am an Amalekite, I told him. Then he begged me, Come over here and put me out of my misery, for I am in terrible pain and I want to die. So I killed him, the Amalekite told David, for I knew he couldn't live. Then I took his crown and his armband, and I have brought them here to you, my Lord. David and his men tore their clothes in sorrow when they heard the news. They mourned and wept and fasted all day for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the Lord's army and the nation of Israel, because they had died by the sword that day. Then David said to the young men who brought the news, Where are you from? He replied. He said, I am a foreigner, an Amalekite who lives in your land. Why were you not afraid to kill the Lord's anointed one? David asked. Look at this. David still called Saul the Lord's anointed one. Then David said to one of his men, Kill him. So the man thrust his sword into the Amalekite and killed him. You have condemned yourself, David said, for you yourself confess that you killed the Lord's anointed one. After this, David asked the Lord, Should I move back to one of the towns of Judah? Yes, the Lord replied. Then David asked, Which town should I go to? To Hebron, the Lord answered. I want you to look at this. God spoke directly to David. He never spoke directly to Saul. David's two wives were, I'm not even going to try that. Okay. So, and his men and their families all moved to Judah, and they settled in the village of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came to David and anointed him king over the people of Judah. When David heard that the man Jabesh Gilead had burned Saul, he sent them this message: May the Lord bless you for being so loyal to your master Saul and giving him a decent burial. May the Lord be loyal to you in return and reward you with his unfailing love. And I too will reward you for what you have done. Now that Saul is dead, I ask you to be my strong and loyal subjects, like the people of Judah, who have anointed me as their new king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had already come to Mennonite with Saul's son Ishbosheth. Oh yeah, I forgot about Ishbosheth. There he proclaimed Ishbosheth king over Gilead, Jerizel, Ephraim, Benjamin, the land of the Asherites, and the rest of Israel. So Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Mahanaim for 2 years. Meanwhile, the people of Judah remained loyal to David. David made Hebron his capital, and he ruled as king of Judah for 7.5 years. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I am actually going to break the video, I'm going to go ahead and finish preaching this today, but I'm going to break this into 2 videos. That way we won't have such a long, yeah. Okay, so David's divine, I want you to look at this. David's divine authority to rule over Israel was stolen. That was the beginning of a long war between those who were loyal to Saul and those loyal to David. As time passed, David became stronger and stronger, while Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. If you fight against the Lord's will, you will lose. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard about Abner's death at Hebron, he lost all courage, and all Israel became paralyzed with fear. One day, Rechab and Benan, the sons of Rimmon from Beeroth, went to Ishbosheth's house around noon as he was taking his midday rest. The doorkeeper, who had been shifting wheat, became drowsy and fell asleep. So Rechab and Benan slipped past her. They went into the house and found Ishbosheth sleeping on his bed. They struck and killed him and cut off his head. Then, taking his head with them, they fled across the Jordan Valley through the night. When they arrived at Hebron, they presented Ishbosheth's head to David. Look, they exclaimed to the king, here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of your enemy Saul, who tried to kill you. Today the Lord has given my lord the king revenge on Saul and his entire family. But David said to Rechoboam and Banan, the Lord, who saves me from all my enemies, is my witness. Someone once told me Saul is dead, thinking he was bringing me good news. But I seized him and killed him at Ziklag. That's the reward I gave him for his news. How much more should I reward evil men who have killed an innocent man in his own house and on his own bed? Shouldn't I hold you responsible for his blood and rid the earth of you? So David ordered his... So I want you to look at this. David called King Ishbosheth an innocent man. It wasn't Ishbosheth's fault that the people of the other tribes anointed him king. I mean, after all, he was in succession to Saul. So David ordered his young men to kill them, and they did. They cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies beside the pool in Hebron. Then they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb. Look at this. David was still loyal to Saul and his offspring, even as he was king. Then all the tribes of Israel went to David at Hebron and told him, we are your own flesh and blood. In the past, when Saul was our king, you were the one who really led the forces of Israel. And the Lord told you, you will be my shepherd of my people Israel. You will be Israel's leader. So there at Hebron, King David made a covenant before the Lord with all the elders of Israel. They anointed him king of Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years in all. That's when he began to rule all of Israel and not just Judah. So I guess he would have been king for 47 years. And he would have died at the age of 70. He had reigned over Judah, Hebron, for 7 years and 6 months, and from Jerusalem he reigned. Oh, no. Okay, it was 3. Okay, if I'd read the next verse, okay, he reigned over Judah from Hebron for 7 years and 6 months, and from Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel for 33 years. Okay. David then led his men to Jerusalem to fight against the Jebusites, the original inhabitants of the land who were living there. The Jebusites taunted David, saying, you will never get in here. Even the blind and the lame can keep you out. For the Jebusites thought they were safe. But David captured the fortress of Zion, which is now called the city of David. Let's see. I'm going to skip forward a bit. Okay. And David became more and more powerful because the Lord God of heaven's armies was with him. The king Hiram of Tyre sent messengers to David, along with cedar timbers and carpenters and stonemasons, and they built David a palace. And David realized that the Lord had confirmed him as the king over Israel and had blessed his people for the sake of his people Israel. Then King David was told, the Lord has blessed Obed-Edom's household and everything he has because of the ark of God. Okay, so this is another story. So David went there and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with a great rebellion. After the men was carrying the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, David sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment. So David and all the people of Israel brought the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and the blowing of ram's horns. And no, I'm not going to go grab the ram horn and blow it today. But as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked down from her window. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt for him. When David returned home to bless his own family, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him. She said in disgust, how disgusting the king of Israel looked today, shamelessly exposing himself to the servants' girls like any vulgar person might do. David retorted to Michal, I was dancing before the Lord, who chose me above your father and all of his family. He appointed me as the leader of Israel, the people of the Lord, so I celebrate before the Lord. Yes, I am willing to look even more foolish than this, even to be humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I am disgusting. So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her entire life. I want you to look at something. David would not let someone else tell him how to worship the Lord. And the Lord punished Michal for rebuking David for dancing. Dancing before the Lord is not a sin, fundamentalist. When King David was settled in his palace and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan the prophet. Look, David said, I am living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the ark of God is out there in a tent. Nathan replied to the king, go ahead and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you. But that same night, the Lord said to Nathan, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? I have never lived in a house from the day I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day. I have always moved from one place to another with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet, no matter where I have gone with the Israelites, I have never once complained to Israel's tribe leaders, the shepherds of my people of Israel. I have never once asked them, why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house? Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pastures and selected you to be the leader of my people. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have destroyed all your enemies before your eyes. Now I will make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth. And I will provide a homeland for my people Israel, planting them in a secure place where they will never be disturbed. Evil nations won't oppress them as they have done in the past, starting from the time I appointed judges to rule my people Israel. And I will give you rest from all your enemies. Furthermore, the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong. He is the one who will build a house, a temple for my name, and I will secure his royal throne forever. I will be his father, and he will be my son. If he sins, I will correct and discipline him with the rod like any father would do. But my favor will not be taken from him as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from your sight. Your house and your kingdom will continue before me for all time, and your throne will be secure forever. I want you to realize that David is whom Jesus is descended from. So Nathan went back to David and told him everything the Lord had said in the vision. Then King David went in and sat before the Lord and prayed, who am I, sovereign Lord, and what is my family that you have brought me this far? And now, and now, sovereign Lord, in addition to everything else, you speak of giving your servant a lasting dynasty to deal with everyone this way, O sovereign God. What more can I say to you? You know what your servant is really like, O sovereign God. Because of your promise and according to your will, you have done all these great things and have made them known to your servant. Look at this. The identity the Lord gave to David was greater than David ever imagined. The Lord also gave identity to Solomon before he was even born. Solomon was the son of David and Bathsheba. At this time, David had not even met Bathsheba. Just because you may be the product of sin doesn't mean the Lord can't use you. One day, David asked, is anyone in Saul's family still alive? You know what? I'm going to skip through that. No, wait, I'm actually not, because this is another thing about identity. Okay. One day, David asked, is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? He summoned a man named Ziba, who had been one of Saul's servants. Are you Ziba? The king asked. Yes, sir, I am, Ziba replied. The king then asked him, is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show God's kindness to them. Ziba replied, yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. Where is he? The king asked. And Lo-debar, Ziba told him, at the home of Michal, son of Emil. So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephibosheth, and he was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, greetings, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth replied, I am your servant. Don't be afraid, David said. I intend to show you kindness to you because of my promise to your father Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table. Mephibosheth bowed respectfully and exclaimed, who is your servant that you should show kindness to a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said, I have given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. Wow. You and your sons and servants are to farm the land for him to produce food for your master's household. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will eat here at my table. Ziba replied, yes, my lord, the king, I am your servant, and I will do all that you commanded. And from that time on, Mephibosheth ate regularly at David's table, like one of the king's own son. Let's see. Mephibosheth's identity was stolen from him when his grandfather sinned. David restored everything to Mephibosheth except the throne, giving him another identity. So his identity was stripped from him. David gave him a new one. Okay, quick side story. It's important to the rest of the story. Okay, then Nathan said to David, you are that man, the Lord, the God of Israel, says, I have anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul. This is right after David sinned with Bathsheba. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. Why then have you despised the word of the Lord and done this horrible deed? For you have murdered Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the Amorites and stolen his wife. From this time on, your family will live by the sword because you have despised me by taking Uriah's wife to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Because of what you have done, I will carry your own household to rebel against you. This is important to the rest of the story. I will give your wives to another man before your very eyes, and he will go to bed with them in public view. You did it secretly, but I will make this happen to you openly in the sight of all of Israel. Then David confessed to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, yes, but the Lord has forgiven you, and you won't die for this sin. Nevertheless, because you have shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord by doing this, your child will die. After Nathan returned to his home, the Lord sent a deadly illness to the child of David and Uriah's wife. David begged God to spare the child. He went without food and lay all night on the bare ground. The elders of his household pleaded with him to get up and eat with them, but he refused. Then on the seventh day, the child died. David's advisors were afraid to tell him. He wouldn't listen to reason while the child was ill, they said. What drastic thing will he do when we tell them the child is dead? When David saw them whispering, he realized what had happened. Is the child dead? He asked. Yes, he is dead. Then David got up from the ground, washed himself, put on lotions, and changed his clothes. He went to the tabernacle and worshiped the Lord. After that, he returned to the palace and was served food and ate. His advisors were amazed. We don't understand. While the child was still living, you wept and refused to eat. But now that the child is dead, you have stopped mourning and are eating again. David replied, I fasted and wept while the child was alive, for I said, perhaps the Lord will be gracious to me and let the child live. But why should I fast when he is dead? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him one day, but he cannot return to me. Then David comforted Bathsheba, his wife, and he slept with her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and David named him Solomon. The Lord loved the child and sent word through Nathan the prophet that they should name him Jedediah, which means beloved of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded. The Lord forgave David for his sin, but he still had to face the consequences. Okay, so I'm covering this really quickly. What happens next is David had many wives. He had a daughter named Tamar by one of his wives, and he also had a son named Absalom. Amnon was his son by another wife. Amnon saw Tamar and became infatuated by her and devised a plan where he would be alone with her and raped her. Because of this, when Amnon finds out, Absalom kills Ammon. Well, of course, all three of these are David's kids. David mourns Ammon. That was his son. And so eventually, after David's done mourning, David and Absalom are eventually reconciled. Why do I bring this up? Because we're about to finish up this message. Absalom becomes extremely important. So look at this. Absalom was actually, he was away hiding from David. And David eventually was like, hey, bring him back, let's reconcile. Now, Absalom was praised as the most handsome man in Israel. He was flawless from head to foot. Does this sound like anyone? Maybe Saul? He cut his hair only once a year, and then only because it was so heavy. When he weighed his hair, it came out to 5 pounds. He had 3 sons and 1 daughter. His daughter he named Tamar, and she was very beautiful. I'm actually not sure where the Bible saw fit to say that Tamar, because this is a different Tamar. I'm not really sure where the Bible saw fit to say that Tamar was very beautiful, but it does. Yeah, I guess she was, but she's not listed anywhere else in the Bible as far as I know. After this, Absalom brought a chariot of horses, and he hired 50 bodyguards to run ahead of him. He got up early every morning and went out to the gate of the city. When people brought a case to the king for judgment, Absalom would ask where in Israel they were from, and they would tell him their tribe. Then Absalom would say, "You really got a strong case here. It's too bad the king doesn't have anyone to hear it. I wish I were the judge, then everyone could bring their cases to me for judgment, and I would give them justice." When people tried to bow before him, Absalom wouldn't let them. Instead, he took them by the hand and kissed them. Absalom did this with everyone who came to the king for judgment, and so he stole the hearts of all the people of Israel. After 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron to offer a sacrifice to the Lord and fulfill a vow I made to him. For while your servant was at Geshur and Aram, I promised to sacrifice to the Lord in Hebron if he would bring me back to Jerusalem." So this is while he was hiding from David, and they reconciled. "All right," the king told him, "go and fulfill your vow." For Absalom went to Hebron. But while he was there, he sent secret messages to all the tribes of Israel to stir up a rebellion against the king. "As soon as you hear the ram's horn," his message read, "you are to say, 'Absalom has been crowned king in Hebron.'" He took 200 men from Jerusalem with him as guests, but they knew nothing of his intentions. While Absalom was offering the sacrifices, he sent for Ahithophel, one of David's counselors who lived in Gilgal. Soon many others also joined Absalom, and the conspiracy gained momentum. A messenger soon arrived in Jerusalem to tell David, "All Israel has joined Absalom in a conspiracy against you." "Then we must flee at once, or it will be too late," David urged his men. "Hurry. If we get out of the city before Absalom arrives, both we and the city of Jerusalem will be spared by disaster." "We are with you," his advisors replied. "Do what you think is best." So the king and all of his household set out at once. He left no one behind except for 10 concubines to look after the place. David's identity as king was stolen from him by his son, whom he had reconciled with. Now, this is actually where we're ending today. Eventually, Absalom is killed, and David is brought in as king again. And after David dies, Solomon is made king. Look, this message turned into be a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I want you to realize something. Sometimes man can steal your identity. Sometimes, though, you can actually steal your own identity. Look at Saul. He was the Lord's anointed one. God would have set up his kingdom forever if he had obeyed the Lord. But if you remember, Saul never said the Lord my God. He said the Lord your God. He disobeyed the commands of the Lord. And because of that, his identity was taken away from him. David had already been anointed a king of Israel. And yet, for years, I guess probably about 13, so probably for about 17, 18 years, Saul tried to kill him. Again and again and again. And then eventually, because of David's sin with Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah, David was punished. It was foretold that his son would die, and that one day one of his own sons would raise up against him. And that happened. People, especially if you are in some type of leadership position, you are held to a higher standard than most other people. You've got to get your life in order. You've got to get your sins under control. Because if you openly sin against the Lord, especially if you're in a leadership position, the Lord can take it all away from you. You should change because you want to. Just remember, you are held to a higher position. And this doesn't just mean like pastors and stuff. It means whether you're a president, whether you're a king, whether you're a CEO, you are held to a higher standard than other people. I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we're going to have a closing song. Actually, 2 closing songs. Father, today's message was long, but I know it's something that many, many people needed to hear. Lord, I come to you right now confessing my sins. Lord, I know that I've displeased you. We all have sins in our life. Lord, I'm thankful that your grace is with us, that you're patient with us. Lord, I ask everyone watching now that if you've told them to do something, if you've given them commands, that they will stop fighting you. If you guys have anything you need to confess to God, go ahead and do it now. Lord, listen to the sounds of your people just crying out to you right now. Forgive them, be merciful to them. Send your spirit upon them and help change their hearts. Heal their minds, Lord. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Oh boy, let's see. Going to go to this song. Can I have you control lyrics? This is a very popular song. You saw Lauren Daigle's testimony last week. This is one of her songs. Oh, and tracking. Letting go of every single dream, I lay each one down at your feet. Every moment of my wandering never changes what you see. I tried to win this war, I confess. My hands so weary, I need your rest. Mighty warrior, king of the fight. No matter what I face, you're by my side. When you don't move the mountains, I'm needing you to move. When you don't part the waters, I wish I could walk through. When you don't give the answers as I cry out to you, I will trust, I will trust, I will trust in you. Truth is, you know what tomorrow brings. There's not a day ahead you have not seen. So in all things be my life and breath. I want what you want, Lord, and nothing less. You are my strength and comfort. You are my steady hand. You are my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand. Your ways are always higher. Your plans are always good. There's not a place where I'll go you've not already stood. Let's go ahead and do Victory in Jesus. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is due him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I've heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I've heard about his groaning, of his precious blood's atoning. Then I repented of my sin and won the victory. I've heard about his healing, of his cleansing power revealing, how he made the lame to walk again and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. And somehow Jesus came and brought to me the victory. I've heard about a mansion he has built for me in glory. And I've heard about the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Well, I know today was a very, very long sermon. It was a very long service between all of the songs, the long harp. But you know what? I don't know about you, Tristan, but I felt like we kind of both needed today.
I agree.
Yeah. So it was a great day, and just continue to, I guess, be in prayer for us. We have some hopefully exciting news that we hope to be able to share with you soon.
Very soon, hopefully.
Hopefully very soon.
So keep us in prayer.
Keep us in prayer. We don't want to share the news until, we got confirmation of it. But
I'll be the one to share the news too. Don't worry.
Yep. Okay.
Cut it off.
Yep. Go ahead and cut it off.